Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Specifically Devoid. This week, we have a very special interview that we did this past October with Justin Credible. I say this now before we get into it because we are going to talk about what the wrestling world was like when we did the interview, so it's going to sound out of date, but it will be an insight into what the wrestling world was like in a period where we weren't active as a podcast. And so I hope you enjoy this week's episode with Justin Credible. Let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Devoid Wrestling Podcast. We are back and better than ever. After 3 long months, we're kicking it off with a bang. We have got the return of former ECW Tag Team Champion, former ECW World Champion, former WWF Hardcore Champion, former a litany of other independent wrestling champions. We have got Justin Credible with us again. Justin, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be back on here with you to talk some more wrestling for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to the conversation, man.
Let's start off with AEW. You mentioned right before this that you're still doing the AEW review with Vince Russo. What do you think of the company these days?
Well, a lot of people may not know this, but since its inception of AEW Dynamite, Vince Russo hit me up, about a month before the show Dynamite had started. And he said that, him and I would, he offered, for us to do a review show for AEW. So what I mean by that is the reason I'm giving you the backstory is I've literally, for the purpose of that podcast, I've watched every single episode of Dynamite ever. Because you got to review it, right? And you got to take notes. So I've literally watched all of it from its inception, and I must tell you, with the host of amazing talent that they have, and all the money spent with everybody out there that's a free agent, I think they lack I remember when it first was popping off, man, like how passionate fans were, for Cody and the Bucks, and that energy that this was very much something special. And just the more and more time went on, it was never. That vibe went away. That special vibe went away, which it always does when you're brand new, that shiny new car, and then, you get a couple of scrapes on the highway, you maybe bump into something in the parking lot, the car's not so shiny and new. Same with AEW, but they had taken steps to get CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, those are just the top two. So many others, Moxley, talked about from the beginning, and the only real big star they had there were like, Jericho, Omega, because you got to put him up there because although he may not have been a huge star in America, in Japan, he was one of the biggest stars. So globally, of course, Omega and so many others. Now it's almost two different products, from the beginning to today. And of course, everything is going to change a bit. Cody's not there anymore. A lot of internal things have happened throughout the 3+ years, but they just haven't, I used to be told stories like this for Pat Patterson, who is not with us anymore, but he used to be Vince McMahon's right-hand man. Pat Patterson also created the Royal Rumble in its inception. It was his idea. So Pat was always a mentor, always helped me, and one thing he always said about booking territories or the WWE or anything, a television show like that, you have to figure out where you want to go. Where are we going with this? Are we going to put the title on this guy? Whatever it may be. Then you're here. How do we get there? What's the journey? And then you fill in the blanks of how you get to your end game. I don't think they have an end game at all. For the most part, they may have ideas like, okay, we're going to push MJF to the moon, or we're going to get this guy over, but there's no real, for example, one of the biggest matches of all time on paper and business-wise, Hogan and Andre. They knew that was going to be it. The moment they were trying to get to is Hogan slamming Andre in front of 90,000 people. How do we get there? Very simplistic. I don't think they know where they want to get to in order to, they're just every week they show up, I think, and they're like, oh, this sounds good on paper, or this title switch. I think at least that's what it looks like to me. And, they have so many guys, man, that are being, you can't use everybody all at once.
Right.
But, man, they got to do a better job of getting the guys they are using on Dynamite, because how many weeks go by and FTR is not on an episode? That's criminal. And so many others like that. That's just an example. And I get it. They're trying to filter in guys in and out, but I would rather them not use a performer for 3 months and then use them instead. You know what I mean? Like from pay-per-view to pay-per-view, say, okay, Samoa Joe's getting a big push. Let's, he's on every episode of Dynamite, not just he's on this episode and then next week he's not, but the following week he is. Just not enough momentum, and they really have to get behind momentum. Another example this week, I forgot the specifics already, but Pac wrestled twice, pretty much back to back from Dynamite to Rampage. Did about 42, 45 minutes defending the All Atlantic title. And then I think, was it the Trios title?
Yeah.
And again, all this happening, all this time being spent really featuring one wrestler and a couple of others that are in the that's a lot of TV time. And Tony Khan always believes in, the fans want to see these great matches and these long matches with all these false finishes. I know that they do, but that doesn't always equate to numbers and ratings. The reason I say that is when you watch a 14-minute match between, what's a great example? A team like the Acclaim, who are the tag team champions, and then a couple of members of Dark Order, they'll have a 15-minute match. But geez, who do you think is going to go over?
Right.
And why did it take me 15 minutes of precious television time to get there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that they say, oh, we had this great back and forth match. Yeah, that's awesome. But so is everybody else. And fans like me, especially, people have been doing this for so long. And a lot of fans that aren't necessarily hardcore fans, people that may put it on, hey, what's going on? Nobody wants to see 15 minutes of wrestling. On pay-per-views, yes. That's a whole different animal. On these shows like that, you don't want, fans are like, oh, good time to go to the bathroom. Hey, what's going on? What basketball game's going on? Are the playoffs on? Whatever. Just an example, You don't want to give fans a reason to change the channel. Also, in that 15 minutes, you could do a lot. You could, get another interview segment in with somebody that hasn't been on. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you really go and take Dynamite, take its 2 hours, and clip 2-3 minutes from these long matches, right? I think anything over 10 minutes is way too much, in my opinion.
Yeah.
On television, right? Because you could get everything across in that time. If not, you're not doing something right. So, and I think, use it for people that need to be on TV. That the women's division is horrific. It's almost, and Dynamite, if you notice, they bookend their shows. The opening match is usually pretty big, and then the ending match, supposedly the main event, is there. And then the middle is almost like the first hour is the most important. Mm-hmm. Then at 9 o'clock, you get a decent match, and then you get the women's, not even the women's match, you get a women's match, the Jade Cargill or Britt Baker or somebody's promo. It's like then the women take over that quarter hour, and then it's back to, maybe some shitty match and then the main event. It's like formula week to week. If you look at the rundowns, it's exactly the same every week. So I think that's a big problem. There's just no excitement right now. They should be on fire. What happened too with CM Punk and those guys, the fight with Omega, the Bucks, that's just ridiculous. But
I wanted to talk about that actually. People are talking about backstage fighting. Is this like a new thing in wrestling? Why do you think it's being talked about so much now?
Because of the internet. Because what else is there to talk about? I mean, no, but fighting used to happen. Not all the time. I take that back. It did not happen all the time, but it did happen. I know I was I've never fought anybody in a locker room, but like New Jack would get into a scuffle with somebody, You know, I think him and Sandman had gotten into it a couple times, and then at the end of the night they hug it out. You know, I know Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart had gotten into a few scrapes.
Oh yeah.
Just the shit like that. There was one that a lot of people don't know about when Taz slapped or when RVD slapped Taz. I guess Taz was running his mouth and not happy with where he was on the card, and Rob was getting the big ECW TV title run. Rob confronted Taz like, "Why are you talking shit?" And he told Taz to pick a hand, and he called him by his real name, Pete. He goes, "Pick a hand, Pete." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" Well, he repeated it, "Pick a hand," and whatever hand he picked, fucking Van Dam just smacked him. So it's not uncommon. I just think now we're in a different generation. People are just not. I don't know. We're a little softer than we were in the '90s and the early 2000s. As far as this used to be a territorial game. This used to be a game of like really tough dudes. Not to say that these kids aren't tough, but God, put Harley Race or Terry Funk up against one of the Young Bucks or even Kenny Omega in real life,
right?
In a fight. In their prime, of course, they're old men. But. Just saying, they were just real tough, hardened people. So fights would happen all the time if their money wasn't right, if they thought they were being double crossed, just talking shit. Who knows, But yeah, to me, it's not a big deal. I think in context, though, the way all eyes are on AEW, especially with somebody as big as CM Punk, and then just the way it all went down it was kind of embarrassing for the company, really, because here you have CM Punk talking shit in the media scrum, and then, backstage, that happened. I think everybody was wrong in this. I mean, everybody. So whatever.
It happens,
It does.
Let me ask, in terms of locker room, who is your favorite person to share a locker room with and why? I feel like we hear a lot of, this person's not fun to have a locker room with, but who is your favorite person to share it with?
That's a good question. Oh, my God. I would say one of the funnest guys would be New Jack. God rest his soul. Just because he was always, not that he was this wild, crazy man. He was just funny, make everybody laugh. He'd always be telling jokes or these wild stories. So he was always very, very fun to be around, Very fun to be around.
Sorry, I lost track of my place in the paper. Actually, speaking of New Jack, have you seen the Dark Side of the Ring episode with him? And do you think there's anything that they left out they should have put into that episode?
I did not see it, to be honest with you. But probably, what they do a good job. I've done an episode of Dark Side of the Ring, taped a segment for the Plane Ride from Hell last season. I was featured in that. So they do a really good job of asking the right questions. The guys that work on the show are wrestling fans, so I'm sure they got all the good stuff that they needed to get. But I guess what people don't understand or don't know about Jack, that it's not normally featured, is how nice of a guy he is. That he's, even in the locker room, I think New Jack put on an act around the boys, a tough guy act, and he was tough, don't get me wrong, but, he put on an act for everybody. New Jack was both in the locker room and in the building. But I traveled with him by myself a couple of times. We did a run of Florida in particular, where we drove together for 2 or 3 days, and you really see the softer side, the talking about, food and, buying houses or whatever, just talking normal stuff. So Jack, he was an entertainer. He just knew how to always entertain and be larger than life, but he could be very quiet and just very, very normal, like any one of us. You can't be on 24/7, yelling and screaming at everything. So he was really, in real life, he was a lot more chill and very loving and kind. He would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. There were times where I didn't have any money on the road, and he'd give me $100. Like, here, man, you don't got to give it back. Don't worry about it. Very giving, very kind person, especially if he liked you, of course. He was a good dude. He was a good dude.
Mm-hmm. What was the experience like being contacted by the people for Dark Side of the Ring?
It was fun. I mean, at that time, I was excited because, I hadn't been on television in a while. And in this business, to get bookings for podcasts, for wrestling gigs, for conventions, etc. You need to you either have to have new product coming out, like a new shirt, a new book, anything, whatever. You have to have new product to sell, or you have to be on television. That's why it was always so important to be on television. So fans don't forget you. There's so many hundreds, if not, probably thousands of wrestlers now, who all have a history background, but you don't remember all of them, so you always constantly have to keep your likeness, your face, your name out in the pro wrestling public sphere. That's why the podcast with Vince Russo is so important for me, is because although it's a smaller audience, every week you're being reminded that, hey, Justin Credible's doing this thing. You know what I mean? Just keeps your name out there instead of, not doing anything at all. And then all of a sudden, oh, yeah, I remember Justin Credible. That's not where you want to be.
Right. What are your thoughts on sort of
experience?
So what are your thoughts on sort of the negative attention that Dark Side of the Ring draws towards the wrestling business?
I mean, it is what it is, right? I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think it's eye-opening, and I think it actually brings forth some knowledge of why professional wrestling promoters and wrestling companies should try to do things a little differently. But by spotlighting it and putting it on blast, so to speak, I think it's good rather than bad, because that's the truth. That's how it went down. It was very much like the Wild Wild West, and I'm glad that the young men and women of today get to work in a much different environment. Like, when I hear some of these things of people complaining, or just, the things you hear, whether they're true or not, allegedly, that some of the big stars are saying, or not, and some of the not so big stars are saying, you're like, you're complaining that you're hurt or you're tired. Like, I remember being in Germany and literally wrestling 25 days straight, every single night in a different arena. We used to wrestle, get on a bus, usually still in our gear, drive 2, 3, 4 hours to the next town, get in your hotel room, shower, eat, whatever you could do, sleep, get back, go to the arena show, boom, boom, every single day for 25 days. I mean, that's the stuff that isn't done anymore, which is great, even though I made a shit ton of money that tour. I think, it's just those things are long gone. And I think in some ways it's good because the kids have it so good. I mean, the money that they're making. I remember my best year in wrestling was probably $300,000 a year. Wow. And I mean, today, we're going back to the late 90s, early 2000s. But today, if I was in the same spot, I guarantee you I'd be at $500,000 at least, Right. And so these kids are making an obscene amount of money, comparatively speaking, to what a lot of the bigger stars made. So it's good for them. God bless them.
Yeah. Dark Side of the Ring focuses on a lot of backstage stories. Do you have any backstage stories that maybe there isn't another context you'd be able to share it in?
Oh, man. I don't know. Oh, here's a funny one. When we were in Canada, I think we were in Montreal for the WWF circa 1995. We were giving this kid, the WWF, WWE, we're giving this kid, I believe his name was Carl LeDuc. He was a local indie wrestler, and he was the nephew or I think it might have been grandson of the great Joe LeDuc he was like he did the lumberjack gimmick in the 70s and 80s for the WWE. He was a brutal dude out of French Canadian Quebec and Montreal and all that. He went out there the first night and he hurt one of the guys because he was getting tryouts. It was a 2-night event. And like unapologetic, really, and he was horrible. He was like 6 foot nothing, maybe 180 pounds, but with no physique, just like real sloppy looking. And all he kept saying was about about Joe LeDuc and how much of a legend he was, and that's his family. And just kept saying all the wrong things, doing all the wrong things. So the guys were getting very mad and very frustrated. And so one day, I think it was one of the last days of the tour, like I said, it was maybe 2 or 3 days, he had these wooden what do you call them, axes that he would bring to the ring as a prop. He'd bang them together and whatever.
Right.
And he had the bald head, looked just like Joe LeDuc, bald head, the lumberjack beard and stuff, wore the gimmick. I forgot who it was. It might have been Owen. Took his sticks, and Owen somehow, we had like a really high, maybe 20 to 25 foot ceiling with like scaffolding and stuff up there. Somehow he got a hold of a padlock and chains and padlocked his axes up there. And he was on the verge of tears when he came back because he couldn't find them. And then finally, I think Owen himself was like, "Oh, look, somebody put him up there. How did they get up there?" And of course, everybody knew. Everybody's laughing, and this kid's like so upset, on the verge of tears. I think he went because he was being a dick though and disrespectful to the anticipant. And back then, to the veterans, you couldn't do that.
Right.
We had to walk a very fine line. For me, those first 2-3 years was shut up, do your job, say please and thank you. This guy was all over the place. Like stiffing people. Just doing stuff you don't do. Right. So anyways, that was a little bit of payback. And dude, I remember somebody told me he stayed in the building till 2 a.m. And finally got someone to get his precious, axes back, and I think he got kicked off after that or never came back. Vince was like, absolutely not. Right. Because not only did he do all those things to maybe warrant the rib, after he got ribbed, he also, instead of taking the rib or being quiet, he blew up on people. Because, when you get ribbed, you're just like, that was funny, and you brush it off. Even though you might not feel that way, you don't sell it. You're always told if they rib you, don't sell it. Just laugh, walk away. Right. He sold it like, oh, you fuck. You can't do that. So, Vince never had him back. But that's one of them. I mean, there's so many of those.
Right. Well, speaking of Vince, I mean, probably the biggest story in the past year in wrestling, the retirement of Vince McMahon. What are your thoughts on his retirement? Finally coming.
I can't believe it. I mean, I never thought. I mean, we have all thought it, I guess, given it a little bit of, thought, but that Vince McMahon would not be with the World Wrestling Entertainment Group. I don't remember working any television matches ever, and I've worked quite a few, hundreds, that Vince McMahon was not at Gorilla when I walked to and from the ring. He was always there. He just didn't go to house shows. I mean, he would go to some, but when he'd go to house shows, it would be a surprise, and you'd sit in the audience, to kind of gauge the show. He wouldn't tell you he was coming. But anyways, it's going to be different, man. I can't believe it. But I think it needed to happen in some ways. I think the way the way what I hear it was going was just not, very antiquated and dated. Right. I think that it needed something fresh. I think Hunter recognizes wrestling today is more reality based, not calling people weird names, especially, NXT, like Pete Dunne was a brand. He was recognized as Pete Dunne, a big deal. Right. And now you're going to insult everybody that knows him in the WWE universe, as they call it. You're going to call him Butch. Right. I mean, it's so bad, dude. Why can't he just be Pete Dunne? You've already named him, and it's not even coming from another federation or from AEW. He's coming from your farm system. And I think by Vince doing those, that's a small thing, but he used to do that shit all the time, or other moves that were very questionable. I think he's out of touch. And I hate to say that because as a leader, Vince is I think people will miss his presence backstage. But I heard it just got too much. I heard that you couldn't even, like when I was there, you could walk right up to Vince and talk or pull him aside. Or if you needed 5 minutes with him in his office, you'd wait out there for a couple minutes, 5, 10, whatever, and he'd have you come into his office at TV and talk to him. Today I hear he's or was when he was there not accessible. You'd have to talk to this one and hopefully talk to that one. And it was just, that's not how you do business. Like literally when I negotiated everything, excuse me, my release and my contracts and all that, I did it with Vince every time. And that just doesn't happen today. And it's a shame, it's a shame.
Have you been watching since Triple H and Stephanie took over?
I have not watched full shows. That being said, I do, I watch a lot of clips. I will watch some matches. I watch some parts of Extreme Rule. Like again, I'll really just flicker around. I'll watch some Raw, but I'm at the restaurant when Raw and Dynamite are on. So, but still, usually it's dead. But I'll try to watch, But I'm always on social media, looking at what's going on and kind of trying to, I hear he's doing much better of a job. He brought back a lot of people that weren't there. Karrion Kross, I heard he brought back.
Yeah.
Strowman, who I don't like, but I think he's a dick. But he has a big, he's got a great look. So I could see why he did that. He just seems like he's doing stuff right, and he realizes what the fans want, because they're telling you, and Vince really almost went against the grain, like, let's purposely not give them what they want. Right. He was that's what it felt like, So yeah, I just think, now Bray Wyatt coming back as well, which a lot of people didn't know how to feel about him leaving in the first place. But guaranteed, I think this helps him more in the long run, and he will be so much more over now, as we saw Sunday night.
Oh yeah,
with the crowd, that this will help him more than have hurt him.
Oh yeah,
so.
The legend, there's a legend almost around Vince McMahon at this point. He's almost transcended personhood to the general public. Is there something about Vince that someone who doesn't know him personally wouldn't know?
Oh, man. I don't know. Not really. I mean, other than the fact that I'm sure people have heard this. Like, if you're meeting with him or you're in a production meeting, he doesn't like people that yawn or sneeze. You heard that one?
I have heard that one, yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird stuff. And he's just very much a, one of those macho alpha. He's nuts. He really is nuts, dude. He believes like, you could, nobody's going to tell me what to do. Like, he's one of those guys, like when he blew out his quads, still kept going. He's just a very sick person. I'm not saying he's mentally ill sick. We probably is too, a little bit, aren't we all? But he's just a crazy lunatic, man. He just always was that guy who went big or went home. The way he walked, the way he talked, always confident. Scary dude. He's a scary dude. And I remember when he offered me my job, it was in, what the fuck was this? I want to say it right. I think it was in Worcester. I was in Worcester, Massachusetts, and this was 1994, and I was doing jobs as PJ Walker. I was 19, 20 years old. And, all of a sudden I'm just, dressed, walking around Vince, PJ, come here. I'm like, what? It was very weird. Vince does, I'm a jobber, mind you, as well. Right. So we walk side by side, and he takes me outside the venue, and it's an old, like, war memorial type of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was actually in Lowell. I take it back. I was looking for the word. I thought it was Lowell, Massachusetts, at the War Memorial Auditorium. And anyways, it has these little balconies, just like in the old days, but it's outside. Right. And we were on this very small balcony outside. And he goes, PJ, here at the World Wrestling Federation, we do this, we do that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yes, sir. And he goes, kind of see the World Wrestling Federation as, well, the land of opportunity, just like the Stars and Stripes. And he points up to the American flag on top of the building.
Yeah.
Like, the Stars and Stripes, we're the WWF and we're a land of opportunity. PJ, I'm willing to give you an opportunity. And that's how we settled. That was the first time, and we shook hands, and that was it.
Wow.
I got the contract a couple of weeks later, FedEx. But anyways, that's how it was done back in the day. You know what I mean? You met with the old man. You got a real feeling for what he was about and what you were getting yourself into, And I think these young men and women don't understand that, and they don't see it. I think it helps to have that relationship, whether it's big or small. I know he doesn't have time to be friends with everybody. Of course not. It's ridiculous.
Right.
But even then, when we had 40 guys in the 90s on the roster, he still had a relationship, with 40 guys. Mm-hmm. Not to say each relationship was, I'll call you tomorrow. Probably not. But, he'd give you a pat on the ass and shake your hand or whatever, and I think that's going to be missed. That's mostly what's going to be missed is his overall presence, for sure.
Talking about current wrestling news, recently the dirt sheets have been under fire a little bit for some inaccurate reporting that's gone on, particularly in the past month. When you were active, what was dealing with the dirt sheets like?
It wasn't bad, especially since I kind of I wasn't the only one doing this. There are many people doing this. I was friends with Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net. At the time, I don't think he had launched .net yet. I think he was still working for Wade Keller and The Torch. But Jason ran ECW. He did the ECW stuff. And, I had a relationship with him. We both were huge Star Wars marks, loved the same kind of music. X-Pac was friends with him as well. And we just became friends. And after shows, I would give him some tidbits and, we'd talk. So to me, it was more like I wasn't telling him anything. Not that I even knew anything crazy anyways, but I thought nipping it in the bud and having a relationship with these guys and at least give them your version of what's going on in the world of pro wrestling for, and then so I always had good write-ups. If my match sucked, they'd tell me it sucked, but it certainly didn't hurt that I was good to them. Right. And they were good to me, and to this day I still communicate with them. But then again, people will be like, "Really, you talk to the dirt sheets?" You have no idea how many of the other guys talk to the dirt sheets. A lot of them. I wouldn't say more than half, but a lot of big names that you would not expect talk to the dirt sheets. But that's it. It's what it is. You're trying to tell me that guys like the Bucks and Kenny Omega don't talk to Dave Meltzer?
Oh yeah.
Come on.
They have a move named after him.
There you go.
Speaking of ECW, you mentioned, how would you say the world of extreme wrestling has changed since ECW has shut its doors?
Honestly, I think it's gone. If you're talking about ultra violent stuff, I can't stand it. I don't like it at all. I was just watching a clip right before, as I was on Twitter to respond to your message. I was just kind of scrolling real quick, and I saw this kid who had went through some those light bulbs or whatever. He did something ridiculous that everything. Glass went flying, and his forearm, he literally was, you could see it like gushing, and it's like a rainbow. Right. And he did this, put it in his mouth. I get it, what you're trying to do, but there's just a fine line. That is masochistic and just dangerous on some, and it's just gross, dude. Like ECW, we push the envelope, but what people don't realize, and I hate to say this, because people will definitely take this the wrong way, but a lot of what we did was a work. People just believed in the work. We did a lot of things that people don't know to this day were not real. we still were, because they bought so much into it, and Heyman, being the master manipulator, would also feed the sheets what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe made up some heat, made up situations, whatever. He was orchestrating a lot. So a lot of our stuff, we hit hard, we played hard, took crazy bumps and stuff. But compared to what they're doing today, just completely unnecessary stuff. I mean, it really is. You can only take that so far. What are you gonna, somebody's gonna hit a jugular vein in the neck and die?
Right.
I mean, for what? It's ridiculous. Look, I'll tell you one thing. One of the matches I had with Tommy Dreamer, and I think it was Stairway to Hell. I main evented it with Dreamer when I had the title in LA. That's the night XPW did their thing with us, where they kind of made a disturbance. I remember the barbed wire match that we were using the barbed wire. I was clipping the barbs off, the sharpened ones, and just kind of making it easier and turning them in. And you can't teach the fans all the tricks, and that's just other little instances where we were definitely protecting ourselves, but fans didn't know that. They didn't need to know that. You can't, if you're a magician, it's not real, but you still want to watch the show and enjoy it. And I think that's what we've forgotten to do today, where we, instead of making it a show where sleight of hand, they may not see it, to, well, let's just kill each other anyways. Like, I think that's what they're doing. They're not even trying to do the trick anymore. They're just killing it and killing each other. And that's going to lead to injury, permanent, you're not wrestling anymore. Somebody's going to get seriously hurt. And I mean, next week, I turn 49 years old, October 16th. That also marks the 30th year in this business, because I had my first match in 1992, October 16th. That being said, at 30 years, very few people have 30 years. I know Jericho just celebrated his. Lance Storm also did celebrate his last year. But now, are you going to tell me that these kids are going to have 30 years? The way they're beating each other up, they're always hurt because they got to be stiff, dropping each other on their heads, missing each other on dives, the ultra violent hardcore stuff. They're never going to be able to even get past 40. So it's very concerning, and I just hope that people will choose to kind of be better at your craft. Then you don't have to be crazy and so expletive of the moves and of the sport or the work of pro wrestling.
Do you think a company like ECW could exist today, or do you think people would call it not violent enough?
Well, that's a good question. Would it be compared to the other ones? If you compared them to the other, would the other ones be around? You know what I mean? Like, if they were around and we were around, we probably wouldn't be as violent. No, I don't think we could do it today either. Just because political correctness, we use scantily clad women as managers, but that was part of it. The cat fights, and all that. I mean, we were adult, we were over 21 entertainment. We were pro wrestling for adults. We were punk rock, and I don't think today you can get away with. They'd call us misogynistic. They'd call us, racist, homophobes, all that stuff, and I don't think, ECW was just so ahead of their time, and we really were part of what the culture was doing. We were trying to use music, cool music that was never used before in wrestling. Instead of that, like Jim Johnson, generic wrestling shit, we were using great songs from the 90s, songs of the time by cool artists, that were helping drive the pops and the wrestlers, like Enter Sandman, amongst so many others, New Jack with Natural Born Killers, so many songs that we use, my song, Snap Your Fingers, Snap Your Neck, so many songs. Tommy Dreamer, Man in the Box by Alice in Chains. It just, it goes on. And I think that's what also helped make it cool. So it was more than that. And then, of course, you'd have your big dive and your, cool stuff. But it was about storytelling. It wasn't just about the blood and guts. It was everything. And, that's what was so great about it.
Well, you talk about music. This is going to bring me into, I have a section of non-wrestling related questions at all, just general
Sure.
questions. I want to pick your brain. Music. What is your music taste? What is your music preference? What do you like to listen to?
Oh, wow. I technically love most kind of music, but I mean, mostly rock and roll. What I mean by that is like hard rock, usually like kind of like the '90s grunge era.
Right.
One of my favorite bands of all time was Linkin Park.
Oh yeah.
I love the
Oh
Smashing
yeah.
Pumpkins.
Mhm.
Friends with Billy Corgan. I'm going to go see him this week on the 13th. As a matter of fact, he's coming to Connecticut. But yeah, but stuff like that, stuff, that rock. I need heavy guitars, and shit like that. But I also like classic rock. I love shit, Fleetwood Mac, and um, the old hair metal bands. I like everything that's cool, everything that sounds good.
That's my answer from now on. Is just everything that's cool.
Shit, really though, like I can go like all the shit that used to be on MTV when I was coming up. That when the MTV used to play music videos, not Jersey Shore.
Right.
It was like all that stuff was just gold, man. You'd come home from school and they'd have, the top 10 with fucking, what was his name? You probably not know him, Carson Daly.
Oh
He used
yeah.
to do like TRL,
Yeah.
and even look, I'm even one of those guys that say I might like a boy band or two, like the Backstreet Boys. There's
Oh,
nothing
love
wrong
the
with a good
Backstreet
boy
Boys.
band.
Not
Nothing
at
wrong
all.
with a good boy band. So, I just love all that kind of stuff. If it's
Right.
just anything that's fun, that's good, you know, I'm very easy with music. I go all over the spectrum. So it's hard to pinpoint, but you can imagine, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. I love that. What about movies? What would you say are your top 3 movies?
Oh, wow. They've changed over the years um, with franchises, but I'd say the top movies for me, the first would be Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars. That was probably to this day, one of my favorite movies. And then I would probably say Avengers Endgame. I thought that was brilliant. I still watch that at times, especially if I can't sleep. I know it's like a 3 hour movie, 3.5 hour movie because I need something in the background. So at least that'll get me 3 hours of not having to change the channel. Um, and another one of my favorite movies, and this is again something that has to do with Lucas, Indiana Jones, the original. Those kind of movies
Right.
are my they're my real. I love adventure. I love all the trilogies, the Star Wars ones, the old ones, the new ones. And I also love horror, and I can't wait for the new Halloween coming out.
Oh yeah, that
So
looks really good.
yeah, it's gonna be dope. So yeah, I like a little bit of everything, but those are definitely some of my favorites.
Awesome. The last non-wrestling question. This is going back to when you were a kid.
Okay.
Did you have a favorite teacher in elementary school, and why were they your favorite?
Oh, wow, that's a brilliant question. There we go. In seventh grade, I went to St. Mary's Grammar School. It was a Catholic school, private school, and her name was Mrs. McDermott. She was friends with, or she was cousins, I should say, with one of my friends, Tom McDermott. Funny enough, Tom McDermott is actor Dylan McDermott's cousin, the guy from American
Oh
Horror
wow.
Story.
Yeah.
He's from Waterbury, Connecticut, where I'm from. So they were all related, the McDermotts. So
Right.
she was a really great teacher. She was the first teacher to kind of show she was normal. Like all teachers at the time, especially in a private school, Catholic school, you got the nuns, and everybody seems old and pissed off.
Right.
This lady was probably in her early 30s, and just was normal. Like, she wasn't overly pretty, but she had a cute face. I remember she was a little chubby, but very sweet and down to earth. Like instead, not like your grouchy, Yeah, I remember,
Right.
God, the teachers back then used to be able to smoke indoors in the teachers' lounge, but the teachers' lounge was just a small closet with no door, so it's just coming off into the fucking hallway. I'm smoking a pack a day as a kid, and then and then when they yell at you, they get in your face. It's just like nicotine, caffeine, and like some fucking striped candy that they have from like Christmas, that those candies that all the old people have, like that combination of all that in your face was just like, dude, I won't get yelled at again just for that.
Right.
The stench was unbearable. But anyways.
Alrighty. Back to wrestling questions. I asked my college roommates that I'm currently living with. They have never seen an episode of wrestling in their life. They've never seen a match.
Oh, wow.
I told them I was interviewing you today. I asked them if they had any questions they were curious about. And they wanted to know, when you were active, like really active, what was your workout regimen like?
Oh, wow. Damn, I used to work out at least 4 days a week. At least. I would try to do a body part each week. Like, I'd do chest on Mondays, or chest and triceps on Mondays. Tuesdays I would do back and biceps, take Wednesday off. And then like Thursday, shoulders, and then Friday, legs. Then you take the weekend off to wrestle. Then you start back again Monday, Tuesday. So you're not overtraining, and you do cardio during each session. So I worked out for 45 minutes with the weights, and then maybe did 20 to 30 minutes of cardiovascular, which is like, the bike, the elliptical, whatever, But yeah, you certainly don't want to overtrain, for sure.
Right. The other thing they were curious about too was protein intake, what that was like while you were active.
Just eat anything, man. I eat like obviously I'm way overweight now. I'm probably a little bit over 300 pounds, which is not healthy. Just so you know, I'm way fat. But no, you're supposed to gain muscle. Now, I don't know how true this is, but I've heard from a couple different sources, I'm not going to say people, from sources that I read online, that to gain muscle, you should have like 1 gram per pound. Or no, that's something else. That's a flat out lie. What is the fucking protein? That was water. I was going to say you're supposed to have an ounce of water for every pound.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of them. But for protein, man, you're not going to get all the protein you need unless it's protein shakes. I like to get like something that's very good tasting and low in calories. That's Muscle Milk is one of the great ones. They're cheap. Get them at Walmart and they taste great. Low in fat, you get like 40 grams of protein. Just eat everything. I mean, eat chicken, eat hamburgers without the bun, that kind of stuff. Just a lot of eat steaks, just shit like that. I mean, you can't go wrong. And another thing you can't go wrong with is like what we used to do when we were broke. Canned tuna or canned chicken. You want a quick 30, 40 grams. Just open up a thing, get some crackers, just dress it up a little bit with a little vinegar or whatever, and just eat it right from the can. It's not bad for you. It's simple. And it gets you too. It gives you what you need.
Awesome. Well, the last question I'll ask, this is again sort of related to my roommates for wrestling. If you had to suggest one match that I would force my roommates to sit down and watch, what match would you suggest they watch?
Of mine or all of pro wrestling?
Of all of pro wrestling, and of yours if you feel like it.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the easy answer first, which is mine, because I don't have that many great ones. No, but that's a lie. Would be Jerry Lynn and I in Heat Wave 1998. We were the opening match and tore the house down. Arguably the best match of that pay-per-view, and that was one of the best pay-per-views we've ever put up. And the press said it, not me. No, of all time. Oof. I mean, I would want it to be something with Shawn Michaels. But which one? Or a Flair Steamboat. But I don't know what they would be into. I would say I would give them I'll give them a couple. I would watch Ric Flair versus Rick Steamboat, anything they did in '89 that was on television.
Yeah.
I love the one with the Shawn Michaels versus the Undertaker. I don't know if it was Bad Blood or what it was, where Shawn got color from the slingshot.
Oh, yeah.
And he took the bump when he was hanging.
Yeah. Is that the
You
casket
know,
match?
and he no, I thought that was the Hell in the Cell when he's hanging up top.
Oh, yeah.
And he stomps his finger and he goes through the
Yeah.
table.
Mhm.
That one was a good one. And a really good one too was Bret Hart versus Davey Boy Smith at Wembley Arena.
Oh, yeah.
Wembley Stadium, big difference.
Yeah.
That was a classic, real classic. So, I mean, again, there's so many, but those are some of my personal favorites.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to plug before we close out here?
Sure, Derrick. Just follow me both on Twitter and Instagram at PJ Polacco. And if you're interested in any one of my pro wrestling t-shirts, go on over to prowrestlingtees.com/Justin Credible. And that is it.
Thank you so much from us here at Specifically Devoid to you. Have a great rest of your day. See ya.
See you.